My name is Evan Wayne Malbrough. I'm a native of Smyrna, Georgia. I was born and raised in the state of Georgia, and I am a 2020 to 2021 Puffin Fellow. So my Puffin Fellow project is the Georgia Youth Poll Worker Project, which also doubles as my own nonprofit that I'm the executive director of. So when we think about election workers, we kind of have to think about democracy in its whole totality. And what I mean by that is that in my opinion, democracy is held up by three pillars. There is the voters, right? So that's you guys, everybody that's watching. You guys are the voters. Your choice gives politicians and other governmental officials the right and the ability to create legislation, pass laws, as well as enforce those laws. Then there's a second pillar, which is the elected officials. So they're the people every summer that are going to try to get your vote. Every election, they're going to try to get your vote. So they're going to, campaign. And then once they have your vote and win elected office, they would then do the responsibilities and ideally the responsibilities that you have charged them to do with your vote. But then there's a third pillar. That third pillar is election workers, right? So they serve as an in-between, more of like a passageway between the voters and the elected officials. The reason because of that is without election workers, there would be no elections. Have you ever wondered about the person who takes your ID when you walk into a precinct, or a person that sets up the precinct or breaks them down? Those are all election workers. And many people think that they are just community members. No, I'm sorry, that they are just elected officials or election office workers, but they are actually community members. They're your neighbors, they're your teachers, they're your friends. They are people who every election get up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, go into your local precinct and make sure that your vote is counted and that the election is fair. So that's where the Georgia Youth Poll Worker Project comes in. So what we do is we help recruit young people to be election workers. Point blank and simple. We do fall under the category of a democracy organization or voting rights organizations, but in all totality, we're actually a jobs program. So we help people get paid. And in fact, getting people paid is actually at the core of how we started this project and how this project came to be in its current form. So here's the story. I was a senior at Georgia State University in the fall of 2019, and I wrote an op-ed called Why Young People Should Become Election Workers. I actually wrote it with the Andrew Goodman Foundation, and we published it on Blavity. And through my research for my article, I started to see troubling statistics about election workers. Mostly that most election workers are 65 and older, and less than 10% of election workers are under the age of 25, even though in most states, you can be an election worker as young as 18. So when I wrote this article, I basically just wrote it to, spread the message and help some people go to their local election office and sign up to be election workers so that we can equalize those numbers, because that's what's necessary, right? We need both older people and younger people stepping up to make sure our democracy works. And then at the end of the article, my editor, who was Margaret Sasser at the time, she says, well, you should probably write that you're becoming an election worker, because it would kind of look weird if you aren't an election worker and you're writing an article telling other people to be. So I took her advice and I put it at the end of the article, but then I also signed up with the Fulton County government, which it has jurisdiction over Georgia State University. I signed up there to work as a poll worker, as well as with 9 other students at the Georgia State University polling precinct. So this was an interesting time in Georgia. So we can now move to January of 2020. So in January of 2020, the state of Georgia completely switched over their election system. So whole new machines. Instead of paper, we're using tablets. We have tablets, iPads, and many other different new technological advances that we are adding in to our election system. So that was one big change. So that required the complete retraining of the entire election worker force. So everybody, no matter if you've been a poll worker for 20 years or if you've been a poll worker for 2 days, had to be retrained. But there was a problem afoot. And a lot of people know what that problem was. It was COVID-19. So the COVID-19 pandemic hit in March, and it was before many counties were able to train their poll worker forces on the new materials, right? So because elections had shut down, the entire country had shut down. So when it came election time in the summer, as lockdown started to ease, the counties had a hard time recruiting new people to be election workers, as well as training those new and many which older people to be election workers. So, as one of the only trained young people in my county, I was asked to become a poll worker. And in fact, my first job out of college was being a poll worker. And as a poll worker, I saw this firsthand. I was the youngest poll worker in my precinct by like a factor of three. And I pretty much served as on site technical support as well as being an election worker. So, I've had to fix iPads, I've had to reboot tablets. For one day, I even had to run an entire election precinct on the Wi-Fi hotspot of my phone. So after seeing this firsthand, I thought, man, I wish there were more younger people in these precincts because I know they weren't. Because in Georgia, what we were seeing were news stories of technical issues causing long lines, causing precincts to shut down, and causing a lot of voter dissatisfaction as well as security concerns. So after experiencing that, I realized that there are a lot of young people who could use paid positions, and there are a lot of election precincts that need people to run them. So that's how I came up with the Georgia Youth Poll Worker Project and our slogan: say we provide we provide workers who need jobs for a democracy that needs workers. And that's how I started the Poll Worker Project. And since then, we have been able to recruit over 1,000 young people in the state of Georgia to become poll workers, not just in the general election, but also in the very hotly contested runoff that occurred that next January. So being an election worker is basically going ahead or going beyond what it means just to be a voting rights activist, because election workers hold a lot of power when it comes to getting people the right to vote. They're the frontline workers for democracy. If an election worker refuses to give you a ballot, there's a good chance that you might not be able to vote that day. So it's important that we have younger people as well as cognizant and informed people in these precincts to stick up for the voting rights of everybody so that everybody can have a ballot every time. Poll workers set up precincts. They're responsible for bringing the ballots to the counting centers. They're also responsible for counting ballots. I personally counted ballots in the state of Georgia. I counted them at State Farm Arena. I might have been on TV. I don't know if I don't know if I looked for that. But we counted ballots. We did this, right? Without us, we would not have gotten the election results when we did, right? And that is especially important now because in the state of Georgia, new laws have been passed putting restrictions on how long you can take to count the ballot. So now going into this next election, we even more. But we also need election workers of a diverse background, not just in age, right? Because we do need younger people that are able to use the technology. We also need election workers of different cultural backgrounds. And I'll give you an example of why. I was working at a call center in Fulton County of Bison precincts, and I get a call. And the call said, hey, I can't find this person's name. This person's told me their name, and turns out their name had an apostrophe, right? So as a Black poll worker, I was able to know, oh, that apostrophe is probably on their ID and it's mirrored in the voter records. So if you type that name in without that apostrophe, they wouldn't show up. And guess what happened? When they typed it in, including the apostrophe, the name came up, right? That's something that because of my diverse experience as a Black man, I was able to, help that person actually use their right to vote and get an adequate ballot. But that also includes many of you who speak different languages. A lot of communities are homogenous, including the language that are spoken in them if they are not English. So you guys have the opportunity to give resources to people who may walk into a precinct and it might not be easy to pull their name up. There might not be translations on that ballot. So I hope what this talk today has shown is that if you want to really help democracy thrive, you should be able and willing to get up on election day and go work for it.